My name is Shantell Martin, and I'm the host of What's the Point? I'm an artist from Southeast London. I also lived in Japan for a bunch of years. I'm mostly known for my large-scale line drawings, live performances, and talks. This is a conversation series dedicated to exploring why artists create art and the forces that influence us. Every few years, I find myself questioning why I make art and what's the point of it. We just we make it, we share it, and then one day we die and we definitely aren't making things anymore then. It sounds kind of harsh, but it's true. When I'm having one of these existential moments, I like to pick up the phone and ask other artists what they think the point of making art is and why they keep creating and making it. These conversations usually teach me things that help me see my own challenges in a new light. So I want to share them unedited with those who might be asking themselves similar questions. Join me as I sit down with artists and friends to talk about their reasons for doing what they do and why they continue to create. This episode contains mature themes and discussions involving natural disasters and accidents, death and grief, trauma and PTSD that may not be suitable for all audiences. We believe in open and honest conversations, which sometimes means exploring topics that can be sensitive or challenging. Listener discretion is advised. Victoria Cassinova is a Los Angeles-based artist who works in several mediums, including murals, graphics, drawing, and painting. I love her work. I'm a huge fan. Much of her work has contributed to social justice efforts and collaborations, and has been exhibited at several galleries across the country. I'm so happy to have her here today. Please welcome Victoria Cassinova. Yeah, Victoria, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You have such a cool name.
Thanks.
Victoria Cassinova. Has that always been your name?
No, it's so in high school, I remember my mom did like a 23andMe type of thing, and we found in our family that someone was named Cassinova, and I decided to take that name. I was like, this is me. This is who I am. And so in high school, I was like super artsy in high school and like would make my own clothes and art and stuff. And I just changed at the time what was my MySpace and my Facebook name to Victoria Cassinova. And I remember some people at school being like, okay, like Victoria Cassinova, like, okay. I did not care. I was just like, this is who I am. And then I just like kept it ever since.
Yeah. I think there's something like that about names. Like, you know, we are our names in a way. You know, if you had a completely different name, you'd be someone different, and you were someone different until you changed your name. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like my other names, my legal name, my government name is all a part of me still. But like, this is like me, I feel.
Nice. You know, we're talking today about art and kind of, you know, in a way, what's the point of making it and how we get to this space where we make art. You know, I'm someone that I've been an artist most of my life, but I do find that I have these existential crises where I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yes.
Like, I'm literally going to make. And, you know, as harsh as it sounds, you know, we're not going to be here at some point. And what was the point in it? And I'm hoping that conversations with friends like yourself that, you know, perhaps we can start to kind of dissect or understand, like, what are those reasons? And perhaps that reason can give some of us solace in continuing to make and create and share. And so with that, I'd love to know, you know, what was your earliest memory for you in making art or creating art or even experiencing art?
So ever since I was super, super little, like down to like 2 years old, my mom has a picture of me like messing around with pencil. I've always been into like drawing and like pastels. And I remember when I was really, really little, we had this Bible book called Precious Moments. And I used to, the little illustrations in there, I used to take it and I would try to make whatever I'm drawing on the paper look exactly like what I was seeing. And that's been my like thing throughout my life because I'm self-taught. And so I would draw and shade it all. And I remember like shading it like really, really nice. And my mom being like, oh, like this isn't bad. Like that's a little crazy. And then I just, throughout my life, like I've always used art as like a pathway to make sense of like anything I was going through. Or I would make portraits of my friends, or like my first heartbreak when I was 17, I like made this abstract painting of like a broken face. And I was so like, you know? So like heartbroken and like expressed it through that way. So it's always been this like tool that's carried me or like a part of me throughout like my whole life. So that's my earliest experience has been probably that I remember is from that. And then it trickled into like being this like my best friend or just like something that I've used in order to make sense of my life.
So you said there was a Bible book. So the Bible book had pictures throughout it?
It was like a children's like Bible little book called Precious Moments. And it was like, I remember the heads being like really big and they're really cute and they had like little eyes. And it was like...
Was there like pictures of Noah's Ark and stuff in there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you have any of those drawings that you did at such a young age? Because you said, that was like 2, 3 earlier on.
Yeah, I don't think I do. I don't know where they went.
Yeah.
But they're somewhere in the universe.
Yeah. They went into the history, into the past.
Yeah.
And got you where you are in the present. For someone that's not seen your work, how would you describe it?
I feel like right now, like my work is very self-confrontational. Like I'm not afraid to face my like deepest and darkest shadows. And then I make art about it because it's like a form of like self-acceptance for me. So I'll take my own inner monsters or shadows and then like personify them into these characters. Sometimes they're playful. Sometimes they're like more serious or satirical, however it is. And then and that's like my way of like facing myself and self-accepting. So like I guess my work in like the emotional sense, that is my work. Visually, it's a mixture of like realism with, I guess you could say, a little bit of abstract with like the type of faces that I do. And I'm trickling into like a little bit more surrealism. So yeah.
And for you, what is a monster?
For me, I mean, I call it monsters. I'm starting to call them more like shadows. Like they're just parts of myself that maybe I wanted to keep hidden from myself or something I might not have liked about myself or how I was perceiving things in my life or monsters that I found in other people. And I often found that the shadows I found in other people were often the shadows that I carried myself. Like everything is like a reflection of like what's going on inside. So it could be insecurities, it could be ego, jealousy, or pain, just like pain of any sort. But it's not like negative. Like I don't want to say that I'm like painting demons and like it's all like dark and stuff. It's like more, it's very like shadow work. It's like transformative for me. So it's like, yeah, it's just your inner shadows, like the darkest parts of yourself that like maybe you don't want to like face or like avoid.
So in a way, those monsters and shadows are like mirrors. And when you paint them, you're reflecting your parts of yourself to the outside world so others can see it.
Yeah, because I feel like it's like to have full acceptance of like self and like almost the world at large, it's like you have to have dark and you have to have light. Like the dark informs the light and they work together. It's like the oneness of everything. And so I try to do that within myself, like take the dark parts of me and alchemize them into light by creating this artwork or like bearing my most personal, vulnerable aspects of myself into work and then like spewing it out.
Yeah, because I guess if you think about it, people have been around for a really long time and within that is some dark history. And in a way that is a part of us. And as society's gone on, we've hidden those parts of ourselves more and more and more.
Yeah.
And, they go somewhere.
Yeah. Somewhere out there.
Yeah. Or out there, on a canvas or on a paper or somewhere else. And, And, I think what I love about your work is, in the way that you described it, it is parts, many different things. Surreal, abstract, realistic, dreamlike, dark, magnetic in a way. And then just there's such a curiosity within what's happening, the narrative of the work. You have these characters, like you said, the monsters or the shadows, and they're in suits, but they're dancing, and they're in all these precarious, like different situations that seem quite familiar, but then you're not sure what they're doing or who are they.
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from of like dressing these shadows in a way that they look very realistic and familiar?
Each ones I do, like whether it's more feminine and they're in these more like provocative outfits or the suits, it kind of depends on like what kind of shadow of myself I'm tackling. Like the monsters in the suits were, that was my way of making sense of like these type of shadows I had of myself where I personified these characters in my head like as if they're these dancers in like these cheap salesman suits that are trying to like convince me to buy into like war or like my inner war or if I'm in a situation with someone and I feel like my power is threatened or my ego is triggered, then like these little monsters in my head are like almost like encouraging this like fight or like this like trying to sell me on this lower vibrational way of perceiving my life. And I felt like there were like these dancers that were like they're really, really savvy and like clever and they weave into like the threads of like my consciousness and how I think and like they have this self-reinforcing way of like making me believe that they're true or like that person's bad or that or whatever it is, like whatever it's making me believe. And so I wanted to like face that part of myself and like personify them into these dancing characters. Or it's almost like, and some of them I make it where one of them's kind of like on the ground tripping and it's like they're tripping over themselves to like try to like feed me this thing that I need to believe. And then I found that once I like made that piece and saw it in front of me, I was able to like release it and like self-accept it. Like, oh, that's just the part of me or my ego or whatever that is like in survival mode about something.
Yeah.
And so that's what those ones are. And then the other characters that are more like these feminine, dominatrixy like figures, that has stemmed through this idea of like reclaiming my body and reclaiming sexuality, my sexuality, and taking ownership of like myself in this like more aggressive way. Cause like, and it stems from a freak accident that I had where I essentially like felt like I lost my body. I lost all control of my body and it like didn't belong to me anymore. And so I have this like very fiery side to me that wants to like reclaim what's mine or like figure something out in like a very like intense way, if that makes sense. And so I kind of, those monsters are more about like me trying to like reclaim something that I felt like was taken from me. And so often those characters will come off more like, maybe they're more like confident or more like, I don't know, promiscuous, but it's really a part of me that like, I sometimes feel like I haven't claimed yet, but I want to. But it's like these like, I don't know.
It's that internal struggle. It does. And what does it feel like to be at war with yourself?
Oh, it's like the worst feeling. It's like, I mean, sometimes it's the worst feeling if I feel like when I look back at myself before I was able to like understand what was going on, it's like a weird feeling of just resistance or angst or anxiety. Anxiety is like something I've struggled with so much, like these fears that I would create in my head about like anything that was going on or like even just being an artist, like not knowing what's going to come next or am I making the right decision deciding to be an artist? Like maybe what I'm doing is stupid and this is all stupid and I'm stupid and oh my God, this is all dumb. Like stuff like that. It's like, it's not good feelings, but you have to like face that head on in order for it to like alchemize.
And did you ever hear those things from the outside world or are they coming internally?
I think at times I've heard from the outside world. Like I think in the aspect of being an artist, I've heard like, oh, like, you know, like starving artist, it's gonna be a struggle. Like you should probably get a real job or you should like do something else while you're like trying to do your hobby. Like I found that like being an artist is something people don't really take seriously or they see it as like something that you just do for fun, but it's not actually like a real like thing. And so I felt that energy and that would trigger my own insecurities because I'm like, well, should I be doing this? But like, I always know like deep down, like this is what I'm supposed to do. Like there's no doubt in that in me. Yeah. Being at war with self it could be that. It could be so many different things with like being at war with myself. Like even like lack of self-love too. Like believing in your own insecurities. That's a war within self. That's like tough to battle.
And do you think, as you're making and getting these shadows, demons, monsters, characters, salesmen out, are you in a way lessening those anxieties and those voices in your head? Are you proving them wrong? Are you moving on? Like, what is that conversation as you make and are an artist?
I'm like, it's almost like I'm not looking at them being like, you're wrong and like, F you and like, I need to cut you out. It's more so like, okay, it's my own like form of therapy. It's like, okay, why is this here? Like, where did this maybe come from? And like, what is its mechanism? It's like my brain is a software program and I have this like little bug in it that I'm like trying to figure out what is that program running that's like influencing the other programs in my head. And so that process is more like looking at it but almost looking at it with like love and like this dark part of me. It's like accept that too, because that is a part of me. And if I don't accept that part, that dark part, then I'm not accepting the whole of me too. And so all of that conversation, that back and forth of like, oh, I don't really like that, but like accepting it and working through it is like the conversation I have in my head, like as I'm making it or as I'm conceptualizing like what this little shadow in my head is going to look like in like a personified form or whatever.
And so you said you had a freak accident. What happened there?
So I was 22 years old and I locked my keys in my apartment. I lived in Hollywood and we were coming from a friend's birthday. And when we got to my apartment, I realized I locked my keys. And so me being a daredevil, I was like, oh, I'm just going to scale the building and hop through the window and get my keys and whatever, because the window was like open. But I lived on the 5th story. So I climbed all the way to the top on this outdoor fire escape. I tried to hop through the window and I slipped and fell and I fell 5 stories.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's intense. But I broke my spine in half. I had 4 brain traumas and my feet were just like crushed and then my pelvis was broken. So long story short, I was in the hospital for 3 months and then I had to learn how to walk again. And it took me like a year to learn how to walk again. But throughout that whole process, I was making art to like make sense of like my pain or to, it was a vehicle for me to like navigate through it. So like I remember so because I couldn't walk for 3 months, I was in the hospital. I would look at my phone and I would see like something on Instagram pop up and it's like, oh, everything happens for a reason. And I'm thinking like, what is that? Like everything happens for a reason. Like this was supposed to happen to me. I was supposed to fall out this building and like, okay. And so I made this art piece where it was like my body, but like with no legs and I was on a walker and I had a bag over my head that said out of order because I felt like my body was just like broken and out of order. And then I wrote next to it, it's part of the plan, like kind of like, fuck you, destiny or whatever. And after I did that, it was like my anger and like confusion about the situation. I made that piece and then I was like, oh, and that part of me like let go. And I realized like, oh, something's happening here. I think like drawing is like making me like feel a little better. And so I would do that like all throughout that time. And then all that whole time is what has influenced like everything that I'm doing now. So
what was your work before the accident like, and then after, what was the biggest shift?
Before I was very into like vibration and energy. I'm very, very spiritual and I'm so fascinated by like quantum physics and neuroscience and epigenetics and like neuroplasticity and stuff like that. And so I would make these more abstract pieces that had like a bunch of shapes and stuff and I would call them orbs and it was like purely abstract. I always liked to paint and draw figurative works, but I was more so in that. And then my accident happened and I just went full force into like figurative forms and like looking at things in like a more like dense way, not dense, like just more like real way. And so my work started coming out in more like realistic figurative
So
form.
you lost control of your body and then you started drawing bodies and kind of, also feelings, thoughts, egos kind of in that realm as well.
Yeah. And making sense of like pain, like the way the body feels pain. Like I went through the most, I can't even explain how much physical pain it was, like going through it. It was so much physical pain. It was They told me I might not like walk again too. And so it was like such a mental battle of like overcoming like whatever reality is throwing at me, I can like create my reality. It was like my whole basis. And no matter what the doctors are saying or anything, like I'm just going to decide that I'm going to heal and I'm going to like be fine and okay. And I would like meditate every day and like focus every day. My mom was there with me the whole way through too. And the artwork along with that was like part of that whole process.
It's insane that you survived that, let alone recovered from that and learned how to walk again. And with that number of brain tumors, you know, completely recovered.
Yeah.
That's, you know, I'm sure you have that thought or had that thought a lot in life of just like, why or how did you even survive that?
Yeah, I know. I think like, I don't know how. I must have been for a reason, but
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I didn't like lose a lot of my mobility. Like there was one point where like my right foot almost had to be amputated because they did like a botched surgery and my foot started turning necrotic, like the skin started turning black. They were trying to save it. They ended up saving it. And it was just so much stuff. And yeah, it is a crazy, I have sometimes thought like, how did this happen and was I able to survive? I've heard of people who fell like 2 stories and like lost their lives, or you fall on your neck the wrong way and you're paralyzed from the neck down. Like I'm very, very, very grateful. Very grateful.
What do you think equipped you at that time to be so strong mentally and like have such a strong like spiritual presence in knowing that you're going to get through that and will survive?
I think it was like a radical choice that I had to make a choice. It's either be depressed and be super afraid and feel like everything is against me and choose the mindset of being like a victim to life, or find the light at the end of the tunnel and like figure this out, like what kind of person like do I want to be and what kind of life do I want to live? Because it's like I was at rock, the most possible bottom I could possibly be. And it's like, okay, what do you want to do now, Victoria? Because like you got 2 options and like the other one probably isn't going to be that good. And the other one, there's possibility. So I was like, I'm going to choose possibility. And it wasn't always easy. It wasn't like I was like, always like, oh, everything's going to be fine. I'm great. And I'm going to walk and everything's great. Like it was a battle, a constant like battle with myself to like overcome myself. It was like overcoming myself and not choose the mindset of being a victim or like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Like I had to find the light in the dark. But it's like, I'm so grateful for that darkness because it showed me the greatest light, and that like, so like I fully believe our minds can like heal our bodies. I also during that whole time I had my mom there with me like for all 3 months, and she was like there with me like going through meditations and like mindsets. We would like envision me walking on the street, like just think what does it feel like to walk on the street like with your friends again, and like just embodying that. And is
your mom spiritual in some ways?
Very, she's like a big she's the origin of my spirituality, or she introduced me to like all of that.
Because it's interesting, if you go back, you had the Bible book kind of at home, but then there's also kind of a practice of spirituality. Were those 2 connected?
So I grew up Christian, but I kind of veered from that in my own way. Like I believe in the higher power and like there being some higher source of some sort, but it was like I first came from that, and then it trickled over into like this, probably because my mom, because she was transforming and going through her own life.
And then with her, you know, practicing visualization and meditation with you, do you still do that today?
I meditate every day, and it started from that. Meditation is like imperative for me. It's like everything for me. So yeah.
And what's your practice? Do you do it in the morning, the evening? Like what's your practice there?
I like to do it in the morning. I like to like start my day with like a reset and like a self-resonance. Yeah.
And are you verbalizing something, visualizing, breathing?
It's mostly, sometimes it's breath work, and sometimes it's all mental, a mental focus. on whether it could be one type of meditation is like listening to a sound and just fully focusing on that one sound. And like it's interesting. It's like when you are able to get your mind to focus on one thing, I start to feel like my body is like lifting or something. Another form of meditations I've been doing, this guy called Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has like really incredible meditations, and I've read a lot of his books about the power of the mind and through like a scientific lens. I do a lot of his, and his is like very like guided meditations that are like super intricate that have to do with like the unified field and like quantum mechanics and all these things.
Wow. When you're drawing or painting, because from my own experience, I know that drawing is a meditation. And so when I'm drawing, I almost feel like I'm meditating or having that same benefit as meditation. What do you feel when you're drawing or making?
Sometimes, like, it depends. Like, sometimes I feel like it comes so easy and it's just like, boom, easy. And it just like flows out of me and I'm in like this flow state. And then other times I will have way too much of like the concept of the audience in my head. Like, what are people going to think of this? Or like, this is a little weird, or like, and whenever I'm getting to that state of mind, the process becomes a little bit less enjoyable. So it depends, like where I'm at. That's why I always try to start my day, meditate, get in touch with like who I am and like what's going on here before I start to like do my work, because it depends. For the most part, though, I'd say like it is very meditative for me, where I don't have to think so much. Like I don't really think what I'm doing, like, because I get the concept down first usually, and then I just create it based off of something I've already solidified, and then I don't really think. Like it's like muscle memory.
Because we spoke kind of just before we came in about this present word, the event that I do, and within that I stand up on stage and I have a microphone and I just speak, or I'm using words from the audience to kind of create this string of words. And I think for me, one of the reasons I do that is quite similar to what you were just saying, is that I do that because it takes time away. Because sometimes I feel like when you have too much time to think, that's when you hesitate, that's when you're insecure, that's when you wonder what someone else might do. That's when you let these egos kind of like creep in, I'm not good enough, or like, why am I doing this, or what's the point? And when you take time out of the equation, you only have time to be your authentic, honest self. And I think there's something kind of magical about that when you just put yourself in a position where there is no time. And with no time, there's no ego.
Yes. I love that. And I'm trying to find that space more, because when I do start on my pieces, I always have the complete concept first, and then I'm just creating what I already decided I was going to do. And I want to step more into like being in the moment, being more present, I think, in the sense of like not knowing, like I'll start on something and like maybe by the end of it, I have no idea how the brush strokes are going to be or whatever. Like, yeah.
There's something really interesting about that for myself when someone has a concept or a plan beforehand, because for me, that's really scary, because if I have a concept or a plan beforehand, that means something can go wrong because there's a roadmap. Whereas if there's no roadmap, there's no mistakes. And so for yourself, like what is that process for you in creating that concept or that roadmap before you start your work?
I usually start with like a feeling or something I'm wanting to express.
Yeah.
And a lot of my work is based off of photography. Like I love photography, and I will usually find an image, and then I kind of decorate around that or morph it or layer it or in whatever way. I like to have, it's like, I'm almost trying to like create like a skeleton, or I guess like a roadmap.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it that way, but that's so true. It's like a roadmap of like, okay, this is what it can look like. And sometimes it totally comes out different, because sometimes I'm like, oh, actually, this color would be better, or like something like that. But yeah, but I like that. Like, I feel like I need to open myself up more, or to like trusting myself in the moment is something I'm like working on.
Which is interesting, because you have this meditative, like spiritual practice, which is very much about being present and being yourself and, taking a backseat to the noise. And then when you're creating, you have, this more of a concept plan, like roadmap kind of way. So perhaps there's a nice balance within those two.
Yeah. Maybe there is, but I lately I've been trying to push myself to just like trust myself more. Like I feel like I have to like know what's going to happen before it happens, or have an idea of what's going to happen. It's like trying to go to like a fortune teller and like find your future. But like if I just let go, like maybe I'm getting in my own way. Like, I don't know.
And where are you making right now? Where's your studio or your corner? Or?
It's in Hollywood. I call it like my little box, and it's like my little sanctuary. And I'm such a homebody and like a hermit. Like I will just stay in my place like for weeks or months just by myself. Like I love solitude. Like I can entertain myself so much in my own head. Like I like created a whole other planet like in my head. But yeah, that's where I am.
That's nice. And so you're making a lot of work. It's mixed media. There's paper. There's canvases. Mm-hmm. Where are you storing that? What do you do with work when you're finished?
I usually, when I'm making work, I'll have a show, and then it goes with the gallery or with the collectors. I don't really have any of my works, mm-hmm. like, and I should keep some of them. They're like all out there somewhere. Like it's very like, I kind of like, I like to let it go. It's like afterwards, I'm kind of like, it's already like been manifested and it's already like old news to me. So I'm like on to the next thing. Like I don't hold on to things that much, but like, I think I should maybe keep some of them.
I think there's something nice about being an artist in the sense that you have that power of reflection mm-hmm. to look back at who you have been. And, after 10, 20, 30, 40 years of being an artist or someone that's making and putting thoughts, ideas, concepts down on paper, you get to reflect and see yourself within that work. And so I think there is something nice about keeping your work from various stages of your life so that you have that power to look back. And that's something that a lot of people in different industries don't have. You know, they don't have that opportunity to look back at 10 years ago and see themselves. And so, I definitely am a big advocate for artists in keeping their work, if only to look back and reflect.
Yeah, I like that. I could not agree with that more. And I think that's something I need to do. There's some pieces I've kept, like all the work that I've done when I was in the hospital, I kept those for myself. But yeah, I agree.
Do you have, an inventory system where you take, high-res images of things and then you upload them to an inventory system and you give them a number or anything like that?
No, but I should.
Okay.
I should. I like that idea.
Yeah. So that's another thing. I wish, 10, 20 years ago, someone was like, hey, Kate, like Shantell, you're making a lot of work. Date the work because you actually forget when you've made work. You never think you will do, but the years start to blur together. And then also there's plenty of inventory systems out there. I use one called Art Logic, but there's many other ones from different kind of tiers in pricing. But, every time you make a work, you take a picture, you assign it an inventory number, you measure it, you take a picture of the front and the back, and then it goes in the inventory system.
Ooh.
And then basically now you're creating a catalog or an archive of your work. And within that, if the work's sold, you can put, the name of the current owners of the work. And then in 10 years' time, you want to do a retrospective, or 20 years' time, you want to do a retrospective.
You know where it is.
You know where the work is. You kind of when it sold or where it went. And so, that's something I really kind of hope more artists kind of do, is just really start to catalog and document your own work. Yeah,
I like that. That might actually be something I'll start like this year.
Yeah.
So I never thought, I only put it like on my website.
Yeah.
But I don't even put everything on my website. So yeah, that is definitely something I'm going to look into.
I'll share some links with you.
Okay, I love that.
So it seems that you've had support creating when you was younger and bringing things into realization. Along the way, has there been any moments or places or people that have really advocated for you or supported in you within like this idea of making and becoming and being an artist?
Oh yeah. I've had like friends, I have really good friends that are so supportive and interested in like what's next, or like that always want to support or feed my like freedom of expression. And I feel really grateful for that. I have like my little tribe of people. And also like some of my collectors are people that are very dear to me, that like really respect my process and like understand like where I'm at or where I'm going, and I just feel like I'm seen in like a very like profoundly deep way. But yeah, I definitely have the support, and from family too.
So what was your first show, and how did that come about?
My first show, like the first time I was ever in a gallery was with Band of Vices in a group show. I think it was like 2018 or something. That was like the first time I've ever been in a gallery. And that happened through my friends George and Azita Fathery, who are like amazing, amazing people. They introduced me to Terrell, and then I did a show.
Yeah, we love Terrell, yeah.
Yeah, I love him. It's the best.
And what was that feeling like, walking into a space, surrounded by art, people showing up to the opening? I'm guessing you went to the opening.
Yeah.
There. What was that feeling like?
It was so cool. It was my dream to be in a gallery. Like that was like my dream. Like my whole life was just be in a gallery. Like I remember being younger and couldn't fathom the idea of like being in a gallery, like how this works as an artist. And so it was like a very like exciting feeling. And there's all these people there, and there's other like really, really amazing artists that were that I felt honored to like share my work next to. So yeah, it was like magical.
What are you most proud of with regards to art? Is there a piece or a moment?
It's like, I have two completely different like styles in my work, where like one aspect is where it's like I use myself as a vessel to express something that's bigger than myself. So that whether that's my other mural work or work I've made for like films or whatever, and then my personal fine art work. So I think in my personal fine art work, I'm proud of all of it. I think I'm like proud of myself for being vulnerable, because it's scary to put yourself out there. I remember talking to one of my good friends. She's an amazing painter. She inspires me so much. And she was like, it feels embarrassing, like to make a painting and put it out there. Like it's embarrassing, but like we do it anyways. It's like we just put it out there and are just like, okay, like, and we keep doing it again and again. But I think I'm proud of myself to like, that I'm within my work, that I'm just being completely honest and vulnerable, because I feel like part of my purpose is like I want to inspire people, and I want people to feel okay to like be themselves, and that it's possible to live in your truth and be heard or understood or validated in some way. And so for that, I'm proud. And then on the other side of my work, I don't know. I'm grateful. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that anybody wants me to do anything for anything, because I want to contribute to like bigger messages, or like contribute to a cause or something that I like really believe in, whether it's social justice or a film that inspires me or anything. Like that's where it's like I like to just be in service and use me as a vessel for like creativity to come out and support this like greater thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you have a different approach or a different hat or a mindset that you put on for, some of the more commercial project with magazines and films, etc., to your vulnerable, more personal work?
Yeah, like it's totally different, but that's why I love like doing the fine art side and illustration and like commercial work, because I feel like with commercial work, I kind of get to like, it's almost like being an actor or actress, where you get to like play different roles, like where I don't have to be in like my own internal introspective bubble. Like it's about someone else now. It's like it's someone else's story that I get to contribute to. And so in that process, I just let myself run free with like style or like how something's gonna come out. Like I did Spike Lee's The Five Bloods cover, and that cover was like completely different than anything I would have ever done for myself. But it was like so fun to do that, because it was like I stepped into another consciousness or like another frame of mind in order to create something that supported someone else's vision. And that's like so much fun to do that. Like I love doing that.
Like, what's the brief or expectations for something like that? So, if you have your body of work here and then you do something that's like so different or unexpected from you, from, kind of the client side, were there expectations or a brief? Were there many different iterations before you got there?
What's funny is like it depends on the project, but usually I get like a mood board and like points and references that the client will want, or like an idea. It's like I found that like the client usually has an idea of what they want, but they just can't actualize it, and they can't see beyond this limited window. And that's where like us as artists get to come in, because we get to like make their visions possible. And so and with that case, usually it's like I just make one concept. It depends on who I'm working with. Like if it's Netflix, it's usually like I make one concept and I just give it to them and they're like, they kind of go from there. Or like, it depends. But yeah, and sometimes I'll make something and they're like, this is not what we want. This is not it. This isn't it. And then 3 months later, they're like, oh, actually, we like it. We're going to use it. And it's like,
sounds about right.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. Or I'll make something that I feel like is horrible, or I'm like, oh, there's no way, this is so bad. And then they like that. Or I'll give them multiple options and the things I really like, they don't like, but they like the things that I hate. Or it's just weird. But
then you got to live with it when they pull it out there in the world.
Yeah. It's weird, but.
And do you have any, so before you start working, do you have any like routines or rituals, any kind of music you put on, or do you clean your space up beforehand?
My space, definitely. I like my space to be clean. Music is like so important for me. I feel like music informs the way things will look, or like the vibe of things. But yeah, I play music. I have a lot of like art books, like art coffee table kind of books, and I'll like skim through there, and it kind of it starts to like generate my brain into this like visual thing, or like this visual river flow. And then I just start like diving in. And I have a lot of like references I'll save and I'll keep for later, that like something about it will spark something in me, and then I know like later on I'll go back and reference it. Or Yeah.
It's interesting because, artists, I guess, that work commercially but then have a fine art practice. Have you ever had any kind of pushback or any, criticism about doing those two things?
Oh, yeah. Like I think in the art world is so interesting, and it's taught me so much about myself, because there's something about the art world itself, and I'm still learning, I don't know everything, where it's like this very prestigious, high, upper echelon thing that like I almost feel like I can't be a part of, because I'm not like serious enough, or my work isn't profound enough, or like, I don't know, something. And like there's all these like little rules that I've come to learn, where it's like you don't want to be too commercial, because otherwise you'll look too sellout-y, or you don't, like, certain bigger galleries aren't going to like that you did this thing with Nike or whatever. Like it's like this weird thing that I've learned from like my own mentors, and just my friends. Some of my friends are directors at like really amazing galleries, and like there is like this kind of like weird thing around it. But I've kind of just decided that like I want to just forge my own path, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Anything is possible. Like I look at artists like Murakami, and he's done incredible commercial work and has been able to balance his fine art work and profoundly influence culture. Like I don't want to like subscribe to thinking that I'm limited in any way, and that doing this one thing is going to hurt the other thing I'm doing.
It's interesting because as long as ethically and morally and creatively, like it's something that resonates with you, why not? And I think it is interesting, this conversation between like art and commerce, because, a lot of artists I speak to, they don't want to do anything commercially or even talk about money. And I say, well, when you put your work in the gallery, what happens to it? And they're like, well, it's sold. And I'm like, it's sold for what? It's sold for money. Okay, so It's retail, it's commerce. But we've created this facade around it. And when you put your work in a gallery, they take 50%. But when you put your work in a commercial kind of space, you get paid 100%.
Right.
So of course they wouldn't want you working commercially, because they don't take 50% of that. But they'll take 50% of you when you only work exclusively with them.
Yeah.
And as you said, when you look at artists like Murakami, Herrin, Warhol, these top artists, like they've got to a point where now they can work commercially. Some of them are living, some of them aren't. But it is interesting, that idea of commercialism and putting people in boxes and giving them permission or not permission, because as a living artist like yourself, you make work and people consume it.
Yeah.
Why do you need anyone else?
Right.
Why do you need art advisors and gallerists and, everyone in between the artist, and the consumer, actually, they're not necessary. So they have to create this facade around this whole industry to make themselves relevant, because you are a living artist making work. This person is out there consuming the work. That's it.
Yeah.
So I feel like for myself, you see this infrastructure that has over time taught artists that it's taboo to talk about money. It's taboo for them to educate themselves. And that's fine if you're from a very privileged background where
Right.
you can just go and you have patrons that pay for everything. But for a modern day living artist that has to pay bills, pay rent, and do other these things, why would they not educate themselves in all the aspects of their work?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm still learning. Like there's so much, it's such a convoluted world.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, but it's like I want to be a part of it, but I've just decided, I was like, I'm not going to be convinced that I can't be a part of
Yeah.
it just because of this or whatever rules. Like I'm going to create my own rules. Like,
Yeah. You can
whatever.
create your own version of it. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you have 3 degrees, you've got to justify it somehow. And, that's by making people feel like they shouldn't belong often,
Yes. Yes.
And as an artist, of course you belong in the art world because you're making art,
Yeah. It's
So-
so interesting how that is. And sometimes I wonder, is this just my own insecurities where I walk into these
Yeah.
spaces or, like going to Freeze and like looking at the booths and being like, could I ever be a part of this? Like it's so convoluted. And so I don't know, there's not one path to anything.
And that's the thing, art is one of those last unregulated industries, so there is so much manipulation
Yeah.
in the art market. And, those two things are very different, the art world and the art market in a way. But if the art market was regulated and we could see where and what everyone did with all the money, I'm sure the whole landscape would look very different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah. So what are you working on right now?
I'm working on probably my most vulnerable series that's based on my brother. So we talked a little briefly before. My younger brother, he took his life on Thanksgiving, and it was a shock to me and my family. And I'm currently, over the past months, I've allowed myself to go into the deepest, darkest pockets of my grief. I've allowed myself to fully feel everything. And almost just embrace it, because it's so much confusion of just my perspective of him as a sister, our life, growing up under the same roof. And then we had a moment where we kind of, he was with my dad, I was with my mom, and then we come back together. It's this interesting way of how we both had our lives, and he made completely different choices than I did. And I'm currently in a place where it's I'm trying to make sense of my relationship with him and making sense of him just as a person through my work. And it's so far been so healing for me.
Yeah.
And this is a series where I'm not going to worry about style or how it looks, or it's probably not going to have the shadow monster faces in it or anything. It's going to probably be completely different than anything I've made before. But it's I'm in the process of figuring out how do I capture so much emotion and pain, but also light and love in a 2D form. How do you funnel so much human experience into that? And I'm not gonna limit my grief. I'm gonna be completely vulnerable and open about it. And then when I'm ready, I'll share it and give it. And maybe, I'm not the only one who's lost a loved one. It's so many people have experienced the negative side effects of suicide and mental health and all those things. And maybe it could be something to help people. I don't know. But that's where I'm at. I'm in the deep, deep depths of that. I'm going to make I'm trying to make 5 big pieces. They're really big canvases. They're probably the biggest canvases I've ever made, but I want them to be big in size because it's a big event in my life. And yeah.
And grief is one of those things that connects all of us, and loss. It's one thing that's been consistent for as long as people have been around.
Yeah.
We've experienced grief and loss.
Yeah.
Who was your brother as a person?
He was very he was like the provider. Like he wanted everyone to be taken care of. So like anytime I ever needed help with anything, it didn't matter what he was doing, he would like immediately text me back. He's very protective too. Like he was like this very like masculine energy in the sense of like taking care of things and making sure everything's in order. So like if I was ever at the auto shop and I needed help, like he would call me immediately and like talk to the dudes for me to make sure they're not like screwing me over. Or like the last car I got like a leased car, and he talked to the dudes for me over the phone to make sure like they're, doing it right.
Yeah.
He was a master negotiator. He was so brilliant at that. And he had a 3-year-old son, my nephew, and he was an incredible father. And yeah, there's this part of him that was like very warm and like calm, like it's very like this. He had like this type of confidence about him that where like he didn't have to say much. It's like he was just calm and quiet, but like his presence is like solid and like dominant in this way. And then he had the other sides of him where he had a lot of his own monsters that he was battling. And through this process, I might get emotional, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm like seeing that he was so much more than his mistakes.
Yeah.
Because there were moments where I was not planning on getting emotional, where I was judging him for things that I didn't understand. And like, I'm learning compassion, like for people that like are hurt, because often hurt people.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing him now through this different lens, and I wish it didn't have to take losing him to like see him. But that's what I'm using the paintings for.
Yeah, you're gonna see him.
Yeah, to see him and like find him in his truth again, and then share that through the perspective of being the big sister. Yeah. So,
did he have a creative outlet in some ways?
I don't. Oh no, well he was a big motorcycle racer, like motocross, dirt bikes. That I don't know if that's deemed as creative, but like he's a daredevil. Like throughout our whole life, like he was always skateboarding, biking. He loved bikes, so like motocross bikes were like a big thing for him. He used to race them and stuff. So that was his outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really beautiful way to, really explore that pain and that grief.
Yeah.
But as you said, simultaneously get to really see him and feel him through the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And like a totally just like real way where it's like I'm looking at him now beyond like anything I ever judged about him. And it's, yeah. And I'm like ready to like face just all of it, like all of the pain, all of anything I've ever like felt with him in my life, like facing all of it and putting it on canvas.
Yeah. We started this conversation by, talking a little bit about what's the point in making art, and, hearing like this story now and understanding that in a way for you, it's a tool, it's a tool for you to explore those inner selves, those mirrors. It's a tool for you to speak to people or family that aren't here anymore. It's a way to connect with them, but also to connect with others that are here, and also to get pain and anger out, but not to get it out for it to go away, but to see it and understand it, and to relate to it in a different way.
Yeah. And I'm figuring out the new language of that through this.
We spoke a little bit about the past and the present. What's the future look like for you?
I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and like continue to, I just want to live my most authentic truth and express it through art. And then that work hopefully means something to people, or I want to like contribute to like the ascension of like the collective. Like I want to be a part of like.
Wait, what does that mean? The ascension?
I know that sounds crazy.
I love that.
like say like collective consciousness, or like the people, the world, or like there's so much dark and then there's so much light in the world. Like I want to contribute to like the light through my darkness.
Yeah.
It like we don't like, I spent a lot of my life being afraid of myself, or like being afraid of my own darkness and being like, no, I can't look at that. I can't look at that. But it's like, once you just look at it and accept it, it's so healing. And I hope to share like my life journey and convey it in a way through art that is meaningful and valuable to others in like a deep way.
About that darkness and pain and grief and loss, you know, there is no light. There is no understanding. There is no acceptance.
Yeah. Yes. I could not agree more. So yeah, my future, it's like I want to just continue to do what I'm doing, and I want to do work that's fulfilling and that's meaningful. Like whether it's projects for social justice, or, you know, we're about to go into election season, and I'm working on a campaign around that with some other really amazing artists. And so like I want to like, we're all looking at this one thing, our politics, our social political climate, you know, all of that. Like what can I say about this that might be an interesting portal on how to like look at this in a certain way that makes people feel empowered, or to remind us that we do have the power. Like we as the people, we have the power. Like we do, and like don't let them make you think otherwise. Like how can I like convey that in a way through art, or like and so in terms of future, I want to do more of that. Like I want to contribute to things bigger than myself and share myself at the same time.
It's interesting just some of the language that you use with regard to like portals, and, you know, going back, you mentioned the work that you was making before your accident and things you were interested in, you know, like the neuro stuff and the space stuff, and, you know, all these words that I probably can't spell or remember.
I probably can't spell them either.
Yeah, but I love that. It's like such a, you know, existential but external part of you that connects all of us, you know, all of those like portals or realms or spaces, like those are things that perhaps we're pulling from, but they're also connecting us. And do you feel that sometimes that when you step back from work that you've completed, that it comes from somewhere else or someone else?
Oh, totally. Like I feel like I will get like downloads of like a visual, or like and it's and I know when it's a download because it's like my whole body lights up and my heart lights up and like my solar plexus and all of that. It's like, wow, this is it. This is what we got to do. This is the path. And so I've learned that like following my excitement leads me to exactly where I need to be at the right time, and all of that, and especially creatively. So like a lot of times like I'll try to like it's like the roadmap thing. I think I bat. It's like I'm realizing in this conversation I battle with like I need to sometimes just like let go of a roadmap, because I'll try to like be like, oh, this is what it's going to be, and then sometimes when I let go of that and just kind of like open my mind a little bit, I get like a download about something. This one piece I made called Duality and Oneness was like a 100% download. It's a very spiritual piece, but it like I believe that we're all a part of one. Like there's like a source energy or something that we're all like, there's a oneness in all of us, but we're all like unique aspects of that one source, and we're all experiencing our lives. It's like the universe is experiencing itself through our different human conditions and experience so much experience. But this one piece I made where it was almost like my own version of the yin yang symbol, and it was a picture that my friend took of me from above, and the top figure is shaded a little bit darker, the bottom is a little lighter, and the heads are connected, but they make like an infinity symbol. And I got that vision like straight, just like purely download.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna trust this and just do it. And
That's so fun. And you mentioned, you know, the title of one of your pieces there. You know, I noticed that you have really interesting and intriguing names for all of your work. Where are you finding those words and names?
They kind of just like come to me.
Yeah.
Or like, because I name them usually after. Sometimes the names of things will come before, or I know this is like what it is. But yeah, it's I'm always finding, like I'm wanting to merge reality, the 3D experience, and the spiritual realm together at the same time. So it's like the titles I kind of feel like are kind of like embody the more spiritual aspect of the work, and sometimes the work itself might be like talking about something just in the human experience of 3D, and then the title is like this like duality of oneness, or like some like 4D. I think I made one piece I named it like 4D violet mind or something like that, because the color violet is the highest frequency on the color spectrum. Just like
No, it's nice that it's all connected to these kind of, other thoughts or philosophies or sciences that are out there in the world.
Yeah.
It's nice. And so if we want to see your work, where can we find you and your work? And, is there any shows in the future that you have lined up?
I don't have any shows at the moment, because I feel like this year's like my experimental moment. But sometimes shows will come up and I end up just doing that. I never know what's going to happen. But you can find just my work through my website or Instagram. Like that's just where it is right now. Yeah. I'm about to go into hermit mode with making these new pieces. So yeah. Beautiful.
And Victoria Cassinova, like I said, it's a beautiful name. I love it.
Thank you.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and space today.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. That was so cool.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What's the Point? Recorded at Spotify Studios in Los Angeles. Check out our website made by eat.studio. Grant Alexander Peters does our theme music, engineering and editing. Research and pre-show preparation are done by Vern Molidor and Joyce Adams-So from the Shantell Martin studio team. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving a nice 5-star review. Don't forget to check out the show description for more information on today's guest. And you can follow myself and the podcast on Instagram at Shantell_Martin. What's the point? I see the stars. I see that space. I understand that there is another place. I pull myself up from this well. I pull myself out of this world, using the strength of my fingers and tiptoes. I manage to create the space to build a ladder, one step at a time, 1 foot at a time. One climb at a time, one rudder at a time. I know that this will be time to climb out, to grow, to see and to know, to understand how trees flow, giving the latitude and longitude of this space, tiny places, tiny homes, tiny minds and tiny thrones. Give a sense of this and that place. Have a sense of this space. With no light and no stars, you can still shine bright like a star. You can still shine bright like a star. You can still build like a star. You can still burn bright like a star. You can still see the place of A, B, and Z. Or I might say Z, because it's between you and me. As perspective from this place is quite narrow and dark, the doorways that we ask and embark, the doorways that we see and embark, the mystery of life that we onboard, the mystery of life that we embark, the mystery of life that we onboard, the mystery of life as we embark. Be scared of some parks as you park yourself and park your mind and park this time and park this space, knowing that part of this is your place, knowing that part of this is soul space, knowing that part of this means nothing, knowing that part of this means something, knowing that part of this means